Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today. It's great to have Minister Alty with us here back home, as well as welcoming Minister Hodgson and Minister Mackinnon. We also have Premier Main here, representatives from the government of Nunavut, Indigenous leaders, MLAs, mayors. It's quite the room we have here today, and it's great to see everyone. We're here today for important announcements about major projects. In March, the Prime Minister referred the NWT's 3 strategic infrastructure projects to the Major Projects Office. And I want to thank the Government of Canada and the Major Projects Office for their work with the GNWT and Indigenous governments over the past number of months. The work has brought greater focus and coordination to the projects that matter to the North and to Canada. That work has brought us here today. And with that, I'm pleased to invite the Honourable Minister Mackinnon, Minister of Transportation, to begin the announcement, followed by his colleagues, and then a media Q&A. Thank you.
Podium's taken up by a lot of mics here. I'll do it this way. Masi Cho, Premier Simpson, and good to see you again, Premier Main. And it's great to be here in Yellowknife in this very august and frankly humbling place. And we're so delighted to be here, Tim and Rebecca and I, to make this very, very important announcement as we continue on the road to building our country strong. Bon matin à tous. Je prendrai une seconde pour souhaiter une bonne fête nationale à mes commettants dans ma circonscription de Gatineau et une bonne Saint-Jean pour tous les francophones qui célèbrent à travers le Canada. We are gathered here today to announce good news for Canada's North and for the country as a whole. We all know that the North is central to Canada's economic future, whether through its vast reserves of critical minerals or its strategic importance to our defense and security. The North has the resources, the potential, and of course, the people needed to succeed. The North has what it takes to thrive. Il y a un peu plus d'1 an, les Canadiens ont choisi un gouvernement déterminé à renforcer la souveraineté économique du Canada. Depuis, nous avons pris des mesures concrètes pour donner suite à cet engagement. Nous avons créé le Bureau des grands projets afin d'accélérer la réalisation de projets d'importance nationale qui renforceront notre économie et soutiendront notre croissance à long terme. Nous nous sommes engagés à réduire le fardeau administratif pour les entreprises qui souhaitent investir et construire au Canada. Et nous nous sommes également engagés à bâtir davantage en formant une main-d'œuvre qualifiée, en attirant des investissements et en diversifiant nos marchés afin d'assurer la prospérité du Canada à long terme. Et l'annonce d'aujourd'hui s'inscrit directement dans cette vision, celle de bâtir un Canada plus fort, plus souverain et mieux préparé pour les générations d'aujourd'hui et de demain. As Canada's Minister of Transport, I am proud to announce today that the Government of Canada is launching the process that could lead to 3 projects being listed as projects of national interest under the Building Canada Act. The first 2 projects, the Mackenzie Valley Highway and the Grays Bay Road and Port Project, are nation-building initiatives. They are about strengthening Arctic sovereignty, creating economic opportunity, and supporting the communities that call the North home. For the Mackenzie Valley Highway, Transport Canada has invested more than $100 million to support the first steps toward a transformative all-season transportation corridor connecting communities across the Northwest Territories. Progress is already underway. Early construction activities supporting the future highway include targeted resurfacing work on Highway 1, with relocation work on the Oscar Creek Bridge expected to begin later this winter. In addition, part of this investment provided by Transport Canada to the Government of the Northwest Territories will be used for planning, engineering, and community engagement activities. This funding supports ongoing project development, including bridge design and environmental assessment work taking place this summer. Once completed, the Mackenzie Valley Highway will improve connectivity, provide more reliable access to essential goods and services, help lower the cost of living, and create new opportunities for Indigenous and Northern communities all along its route. And by reducing travel times and improving access to critical supplies, healthcare, and economic opportunities, this project will have a lasting impact on the quality of life of Northerners. Now, similarly, the Grays Bay Road and Port Project will help establish Canada's first overland connection to a deep water port on the Arctic Ocean. Transport Canada has committed more than $21 million toward planning, environmental assessments, and other pre-construction activities needed to advance the project. And once completed, this year-round transportation link will improve access to global markets, support responsible resource development, and strengthen the infrastructure needed to foster economic growth and prosperity across the North. And today, the Government of Canada is also referring a third project to the Major Projects Office, the Nuclear Waste Management Organization's Deep Geological Repository. Located in northwestern Ontario near Wabigoon Lake, Ojibwe Nation, and the township of Ignace, this project is designed to provide the safe, long-term management of Canada's used nuclear fuel. L'inscription éventuelle de ces projets à titre de projet d'intérêt national en vertu de la loi visant à bâtir le Canada représente bien plus qu'une simple étape administrative. Elle offre une grande prévisibilité aux promoteurs grâce à un processus décisionnel unique, dès le départ, à des parcours réglementaires plus clairs et à des échéanciers plus prévisibles. Et cette prévisibilité contribue à réduire les risques, à attirer les investissements et à accélérer la réalisation d'infrastructures essentielles. Avant qu'une décision ne soit prise, des consultations auront lieu au cours des prochains mois avec les titulaires des droits autochtones, les gouvernements provinciaux et territoriaux, ainsi qu'avec les ministres fédéraux. So I want to be clear. These three projects reflect our determination to use every tool available to build the infrastructure Canada needs and to deliver major projects more efficiently. They also demonstrate something equally important, the strength of our partnerships with Indigenous governments, communities, and organizations. Their leadership, their knowledge, and their perspectives are essential to the success of these projects and to the future of this incredible part of our country. En fin de compte, investir dans les corridors commerciaux et de transport du Nord, c'est bien plus qu'une question d'infrastructure. C'est renforcer nos chaînes d'approvisionnement, créer des bons emplois, soutenir les communautés nordiques et affirmer la souveraineté du Canada dans l'Arctique pour les décennies à venir. This is a very, very proud day. Hopefully, we'll look back and say it is an historic day where we collectively decide to move forward on these essential projects. And I want to thank you all for your very, very warm Northern welcome. Thank you. Merci.
Next, I'd like to invite up Minister Hodgson, the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources Canada.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Bonjour à tous. C'est un plaisir d'être ici aujourd'hui. As Minister Mackinnon said today, we're marking a major milestone. For the first time, the Government of Canada is initiating the process to potentially list projects under the landmark Building Canada Act. For many Canadians outside government, and I know this because I was one of them just a year ago, that probably sounds like a lot of jargon. So let me tell you why it matters. We're at a pivotal moment. We're facing a global energy crisis. We're facing attacks on our sovereignty, a changing global economic reality, a difficult security environment, and major climate change. For a year now, your new government has faced all these challenges with a singular mission: build Canada strong for all. The word building is no accident, because whether it's a need to develop our energy and critical minerals, a need for trade diversification, a need for national security, or a need to get to net zero by 2050, to meet these goals, we're going to need to build big things again, both quickly and responsibly, in partnership with Indigenous peoples. The Building Canada Act and the Major Projects Office are making this possible. Since we passed the Act, including today's announcement, we have referred 16 projects and 7 transformative strategies to the MPO, representing a combined investment in this country of more than $138 billion. These major projects will create tens of thousands of well-paying jobs for Canadians. They build our energy, mining, and electricity and transportation sectors, and beyond that. And they demonstrate to the world Canada's ambition from coast to coast to coast. Ladies and gentlemen, so far the Prime Minister has broken ground at the Nouveau graphite Mattamy mine in Quebec, which will be the largest graphite mine in the G7. The McIlvany Bay has produced its first copper concentrate in Saskatchewan, the first copper produced at a mine in Saskatchewan in over 2 decades. And the Silicium LNG project has secured Canada's first major long-term LNG offtake agreements with a European partner, Germany's CFE. These are not abstract ideas, and they are not coincidental. They are the results of the work of the Major Projects Office. They are the results of the partnerships between the federal government and provinces and territories and Indigenous peoples, and the buy-in of Canadians who know we need to do something different if we want to build a stronger, more prosperous, and more sovereign Canada. So today we take another step, advancing these projects under the Act to demonstrate exactly why this work matters. The Nuclear Waste Management Organization's deep geological repository for used nuclear fuel is essential to Canada's nuclear future. It's a result of decades of research, deep partnership with the Wabigan Lake Ojibwe Nation, and Canada joining our peers like France, Switzerland, Finland, and Sweden in what is internationally recognized as the safest, most responsible approach to managing used nuclear fuel. Earlier this week, I announced Canada's first ever national nuclear energy strategy. That strategy makes it simple. If Canada is serious about expanding nuclear energy, we must also be serious about safe, responsible, long-term management of used nuclear fuel. That is what the Deep Geological Repository represents. It helps unlock the next generation of nuclear projects. It supports the continued safe operation of Canada's existing nuclear fleet, and it will create more than 1,500 jobs, including opportunities for Wabigan Lake Ojibwe Nation and the town of Ignis and the surrounding region. It means that Canadians can be assured your federal government not only has a plan to grow our grid, but to ensure that the burden of that does not rest on the next generation of Canadians. We need to do our part. Here in the north, the Mackenzie Valley Highway and the Grays Bay Road and Port represent something just as important: connection. Connecting communities, connecting northern resources to Canadian and global supply chains, and connecting the enormous potential of the north to the prosperity of the whole country. These projects have been talked about for decades. Today we make good on a promise we made to Canadians. Less talking, more building. I'll end where I began. This is about building Canada strong for all. We will build in partnership with Indigenous peoples, respecting rights and treaties, We will build by maintaining world-class environmental standards so we can do things right the first time. And we will build by making clear to the world that Canada is willing and able to move major projects from possibility to reality. Today is not the end of this process. It's the beginning of consultations with Indigenous rights holders, territorial and provincial governments, the federal government departments and agencies, to make sure we proceed with a responsible Team Canada approach that meets the values and standards Canadians expect. But it's an important beginning. It says Canada is ready to build big things again. It says Canada is central. It says the North is central to Canada's future. And it says that when projects strengthen our sovereignty, grow our economy, support reconciliation, and secure our energy and resource future, your federal government is determined to move with purpose. So thank you very much, merci, and I look forward to the questions.
Next, I'd like to introduce the NWT's very own, the Honourable Rebecca Alty, Minister of Indigenous Crown Relations.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Premier, Presidents, Mayors, MLAs, Chiefs, the West Kitikmeot Corporation, Indigenous Advisory Council members, and all residents. Thank you for joining us this morning. And thank you, of course, to Minister Mackinnon, Minister Hodgson, for joining us today. If you ask any Northerner, they'll tell you that infrastructure is about more than roads and bridges. For many communities, it determines whether people are connected to or cut off from opportunities, jobs, and growth. It determines the cost of living, the delivery of essential services, and whether or not people can realize their full potential. Infrastructure is the foundation of strong, resilient communities. And as the world turns its attention north, many Canadians are realizing something that we've always known to be true: that northern infrastructure is essential to both defending Canada and growing the Canadian economy. That's what this announcement is about. We're launching the process to consider listing two major projects here in the north, the Mackenzie Valley Highway and the Grays Bay Road and Port, as projects of national interest under the Building Canada Act. This marks another major step forward in our government's plan to build, defend, and transform the north alongside the people who raise families, live, and work here. Early work is already underway. This summer, the Government of the Northwest Territories is advancing planning and engineering supported by a $65 million investment from Transport Canada's National Trades Corridors Fund. That work will include targeted highway resurfacing along the existing route, as well as bridge design and environmental assessment activities that are essential to moving this project forward in a responsible way. These projects are central to a broader vision for the North and for all of Canada. As the Prime Minister said when he was in Yellowknife earlier this year, as we connect our communities to each other, we also connect them to the world. That vision is beginning to take shape. The Mackenzie Valley Highway will connect communities that have waited generations for reliable, year-round access. It will lower the cost of living, improve emergency response, create new economic opportunities, and unlock natural resources to power Canada's growth. In Nunavut, the Grays Bay Road and Port project will open a new gateway to the world through the Arctic Ocean, creating new trade routes, strengthening sovereignty, and connecting the North to global markets. But how we build is just as important as what we build. Our priority is clear: to move forward quickly, but we must do it in partnership, with respect for rights, and with lasting benefits for Indigenous communities. This is how we build trust. This is how we uphold our obligations, and this is how we move forward together. We're working in partnership with territorial and Indigenous governments to ensure that the benefits of these projects flow into communities and not past them. That means equity ownership, good jobs, skill development, and lasting prosperity. Distance has never limited the North's potential, but for too long, it has limited opportunity. Our government is determined to change that. Together, these projects are part of a larger effort to build up a region that has too often been overlooked, but has always been essential to Canada's identity and future. Our responsibility is to ensure that the future is shaped in true partnership with the Indigenous peoples who have called the North home since time immemorial. This is what real, tangible reconciliation looks like, and that's how we build a stronger North and a stronger Canada for all. So thank you, merci, and masicho.
So now we're going to have a media Q&A, and then after that I will make some closing remarks. So I'd like to hand it over to our moderator to lead the discussion. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Bonjour à tous. As Karen said, we're going to go to the media Q&A portion of the announcement now. So we'll start with those in the room and then we'll move to those that we have online. If you have a question in the room, please just raise your hand and I'll move the mic around. So you can just state your name and the outlet we're reporting from before you ask a question. Please do so, and if it's for any of our specific speakers, please let us know so they can come to the podium. We are going to just do one question and no follow-ups this morning because we have an overwhelming number of media online. We want to make sure everyone gets a chance. All right, we'll take questions in the room.
Ollie Williams from Cabinet Radio. This is a question for the Premier, possibly for the federal ministers as well. In terms of streamlining regulation at a federal level and those processes, what will you do to ensure that the MWT's regulators and Indigenous governments, for that matter, don't feel undue pressure from the fast tracking that will be happening around them?
So in the Northwest Territories, we have a co-management system, a regulatory system, with the Indigenous governments, the federal government, and the territorial government as partners. If we are deemed a project of national interest, that does not impact our regulatory system. There will still be community input. There will still be those opportunities for the people of the North to have a say on this project. When it comes to Bill C-5 and what happens under that, I leave that to a federal minister to discuss. But we have robust environmental protections, robust regulatory system based on modern treaties, and that will be respected throughout the process. Thank you.
I think the Premier covered it, but it is really about the Indigenous governments, the territorial governments, the regulatory process. They've been working together to accelerate these projects already. There's been some streamlined approaches taken, so it's continuing that work. And then with any other permits that are required for these projects, the federal government, through the Building Canada Act, will have the one minister responsible with that one list of conditions.
Thank you very much. Next question.
Thank you, Charlotte Etienne. This question for the ministers. I'm wondering if you can provide examples in layman's terms of how listing these projects would streamline federal approval and financing processes.
Yes, so let me give you an example in layman's terms. The way it works today, a proponent who wants to build or a community or a government that wants to look at approving a project spends a huge amount of time and effort and money getting through that consultation and environmental approval process to then at the end of that process to have a political decision by the federal government. That means people have spent a lot of time and a lot of money not knowing whether a project is going to move forward. What a listing does is says, after the consultation around the listing, we move the political decision up in that process. And we give people clarity that from a political decision, we've determined it's a project of national interest. So once you have completed the consultation, because you still have to complete consultation and work with Indigenous peoples, once you have completed the environmental process and we have delivered a conditions document which says these are all the things you must do to operate in a responsible way, you know you can build. That gives people the incentive to spend the time and energy and money, and quite frankly doesn't waste Indigenous people's time working on things only to find out at the end of the process it's not going forward. This is a way to create greater certainty, to focus our energy, our resources, and our time on the projects that we want to go ahead. And this is a practical way about how we will get big things built again. Hopefully that answers your question.
Merci beaucoup. Prochaine question.
Good morning. I'm not sure who wants to answer this. A release just went out from the Yellowknife Lands Corporation and FERC of Hope BT Nation opposing fast tracking on Mackenzie Valley Highway. I know you mentioned extensively, James O'Connor, CPLB, mentioned extensively consultations with Indigenous governments and communities. When will that start? Apparently there's some concern already for this.
So for the northern projects, the co-management regulatory system continues, and so the consultation occurs through that process. The designating under the Building Canada Act also has the consultation to add it to the Act. So today is the announcement that consultations will begin. So this is the first step, and so consultations are to come on whether to list these projects under the Building Canada Act. But again, for both Grays Bay as well as the Mackenzie Valley Highway, it's the co-management system, and so consultation also happens through that process.
Good morning, thanks. So I haven't seen the press release, so I'm not going to speak directly to that. Obviously, we're going to follow up. But just the word of fast tracking, I think, gets a bit of a bad name. We aren't going to let projects just be done to us. We want to do projects together, right? And they're going to be done with community and for community. And we've already been doing that. We pulled back Mackenzie Valley Highway about a year ago and actually did a whole realignment process with the Pesquet First Nation. By taking a step back, it's actually moving us forward faster. That's what's allowing us to keep moving forward. That's the kind of fast tracking we do, is by actually working with community. So we're not going to change the way we've been doing things. We're going to keep doing things the way we've been doing it. That's what will allow it to go faster, not pushing it through. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Are there additional questions in the room?
Good morning, I'm Kayla Jeffrey with CBC North. So an environmental assessment is usually taken before a project. They're still underway, so can an environmental assessment still conclude that parts of the highway should not proceed as proposed, or is it concluded that it's going to proceed?
As my colleagues have explained, and I would reiterate, in terms of building a road, a mine, and anything, there is nothing in any of these processes that remove the responsibility to consult Indigenous peoples and to do a full environmental assessment under all of the various federal approval processes, whether it be fisheries or Environment Canada or navigable waterways or any of the other processes that exist. So all of those processes continue. What does happen is that, to perhaps build on what my colleague Tim said, is these processes now can go on simultaneously with a much more focused set of experts leading them, a single point of consultation for Indigenous peoples that simplifies their lives, where they're not doing these sequential and perhaps even independent processes that take a long time and require a lot of community resources. So no approval process, no consultation is removed as part of this process. What is done is a lot of focus and resources are brought to bear so that things can move more quickly in parallel and obviously always alongside communities, alongside all interested parties, and of course all Indigenous peoples.
Thank you very much. Do we have any further questions in the room? Okay. to one more, and then we'll move to our friends online.
Ma question va to the Minister. Et si possible, une réponse en français, c'est très apprécié.
Absolument.
So I'll ask in English and in French.
Are you with Radio Canada, CBC?
Sorry, Thomas Etier from Radio Canada. CBC.
D'accord, merci. Merci.
So, generally speaking, what
Tu peux y aller en français si tu veux, vas-y.
Je vais commencer en français. Je vais connaître en anglais après. Qu'est-ce qui va être différent cette fois-ci? Ça fait des décennies qu'on parle de construire la route du Mackenzie. Donc, c'est une question très générale, mais qu'est-ce qui va, pourriez-vous nous expliquer ce qui va permettre d'accélérer le processus? Et avez-vous des attentes quant au moment où la route va être, les premières étapes de la route vont être complétées et accessibles au public?
Ben, votre deuxième question d'abord, il y aura des activités de construction qui s'amorcent dès cette année. Donc, on a déjà financé, comme mon discours l'a indiqué, certains tronçons, certaines structures, des ponts, etc. Et je veux remercier le Premier ministre et la ministre. On s'est rencontrés à multiples reprises là-dessus. C'est un projet qui est cher non seulement et évidemment pour les gens des territoires du Nord-Ouest, mais pour l'ensemble du pays. Ça nous donne un accès à l'océan, ça nous donne un accès aux communautés du Grand Nord et ça nous donne un accès à un grand potentiel en ressources naturelles. Ce qui, comme je viens de répondre tout à l'heure, il n'y a aucun projet. Nous savons que c'est un projet qui est discuté depuis longtemps. Il y en a beaucoup de ces projets-là au Canada. Et nous voulons amener les ressources nécessaires, l'attention nécessaire, afin de regrouper tout ça, de faire en sorte que les études sont faites ponctuellement, en parallèle, avec toutes les obligations que le gouvernement du Canada doit décharger pour, évidemment, venir à une approbation, mais les faire d'une seule vitrine, les faire de façon concertée et avec les ressources du Bureau des projets majeurs qui sont considérables maintenant pour amener un projet jusqu'à le début d'exécution du projet. Did you want me to do that in English as well, or?
I think it was
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone. Now we're going to take questions from the line. Nous tournons maintenant vers les questions virtuelles. Please raise your hand to queue up for questions. When you're called on, please unmute your mic, identify yourself and your government. We'll go with one question per video. Veuillez lever la main avec une entente pour la question. Lorsqu'on vous appelle, enlevez la mode soutien, présentez-vous et votre média. Nous prendrons une question par média. Nous commencerons avec Jillian Piper. Jillian, please unmute yourself and go ahead.
Hi there. Thank you for taking questions today. My question is to Minister Hodgson, I believe, or Minister Tim, whoever would like to take this, but your government has gone as we've never seen before, but no projects that have been referred to the MPO have actually started construction, and senior officials say that these 3 projects today likely won't start construction until next year at the very earliest, and some not until 2028. How can you say this is speed that Canadians have never seen before when no major projects have been fast-tracked or built in over a year since the legislation passed?
I'm not sure where you're getting your information. I thought I saw Contrecoeur is building today. I thought I saw that the Darlington new nuclear reactor is building today. I thought I talked about in my remarks that the McIlvany copper mine is building and about to ship its first new copper concentrate. I think the Prime Minister did a ground turning at Nouveau-Mont Graphite, so I'm not sure where you're getting your information, but I think we're actually building quite a few things.
Thank you. We'll now go with Nick Murray. Nick, please unmute yourself, identify your opinion.
Hi, good morning. Yeah, Nick Murray from you. Thanks for taking my questions. My question is also for Mr. Hodgson and Mr. Kim for the Los Angeles. But In answering a previous question from my colleague in the room, Mr. Hodgson said that having the project listed as a project of national interest for the Canada Act would give investors confidence that if they do return money, that at the end of the process, they won't just find out that, oh, it's just not going to go ahead. So I understand the federal government's role in that as far as streamlining federal regulations in that regard to have condition documents set out at the end of the environmental review. But in the case of the North, and I used to raise for project specifically, like there is still an environmental process that has to go through the NERD process when you attack the board. And only at the end of that process can the federal government issue documents. And so how do you say that you're providing investor confidence when it still has to go through that process and at the end of it, the NERD should actually just say that all the projects is not what you did with the Rapid and Iron. Now based on financial trouble.
Did you want to add on anything to this? No. So that is obviously a highly important, highly strategic project. Obviously, an extraordinarily rich project, rich in the sense of possibilities for Nunavut, for Nunavut's resource sector, for the people of Nunavut, and of course for our Arctic sovereignty and the Department of National Defence, the Canadian Armed Forces. So Grays Bay is an incredibly central and strategic project for the Government of Canada. Of course, it is subjected to the joint territorial community federal government process. Those processes are not listed in Schedule 2 of the Build Canada Act. But what I will say about that project, Nick, and about the Mackenzie Valley Highway, there seems to be strong signals have been sent that there's new impetus with respect to those territorial federal community processes, and that there is a real willingness to apply the resources required. By announcing what we're announcing today, we're signaling that the federal government intends to deploy the tools offered to it by the Building Canada Act after we go through the appropriate consultations, apply those resources, apply that very, very streamlined process to our end of the bargain. And I know the premiers who are here, the Premier of Nunavut's here, the Premier of Northwest Territories are here, their respective ministers, all are, I can assure you, looking very much forward to doing everything they can, applying all of their resources as well to getting those projects through the management board processes.
Thank you. We'll now move over to Yasmin. Yasmin, unmute yourself, identify your record.
Oui, bonjour, Yasmin avec Radio-Canada à Ottawa. Ma question est pour M. Mackinnon. Donc, vous désignez ces projets en vertu de la loi visant à bâtir le Canada. Vous lancez un processus pour voir, en fait, si on peut éventuellement les désigner en vertu de la loi. Pouvez-vous nous expliquer en quoi c'est un processus qui sera effectivement plus rapide si la construction ne laisse pas de débuter avant plusieurs années là, pour certains projets, du moins c'est ce qu'on a indiqué au fonctionnaire.
Donc, un peu ce que j'ai répondu un peu là-dessus à une question ici de la salle. Ce que le projet de loi, ou la loi 5, nous permet de faire, c'est de mener tous les processus d'approbation nécessaires pour un projet donné, les mener en parallèle avec une seule interface et un seul promoteur interne, si vous voulez, et une seule interface avec les communautés autochtones. Ça nous permet de faire en sorte que le processus ou les processus sont réduits en termes de temps. Comme vous venez d'entendre, il y a des processus séparés, processus légaux avec les territoires qui doivent poursuivre leur travail, mais il y a des signaux très, très forts que ces processus-là aussi sont en train de s'accélérer. Donc, nous sommes très, très encouragés. Ce sont des projets, ce que nous voyons, c'est que ce soit les trois projets qu'on discute aujourd'hui ou bien d'autres. M. Hodgson a fait référence à plusieurs autres projets qui sont maintenant en cours. c'est qu'en mettant les ressources nécessaires pour prendre l'inventaire de ce qui reste à faire pour un projet donné, appliquer les ressources nécessaires, oui, faire en sorte qu'on peut canaliser toute notre attention réglementaire, si vous voulez, en parallèle, on peut rapetisser sans couper les coins ronds en matière d'analyse et approbation environnementale. Donc, quand est-ce qu'un projet donné va commencer? Bien, évidemment, ça dépend. Nous avons des lois, nous avons des obligations que nous devons suivre, mais je peux vous rassurer que dans la totalité, dans tous les cas, nous allons pouvoir couper des mois, des années, et oui, des milliards, ça c'est d'intérêt évidemment pour les contribuables, couper des milliards de dollars des prix de certains de ces projets-là en accélérant les processus sans pour autant brûler des étapes.
Merci beaucoup. Let's now go to Jeff Benson from NBC News. Jeff, go ahead.
Good morning, Ministers, and thank you for taking our questions today. My question is for whichever federal minister wants to answer this, and it specifically pertains to the Grays Bay project. The component behind the Grays Bay project estimates that this is a $1 billion project, and they have said that they are looking for the federal government to cover about 75% of the cost of this project. Is the federal government committed to that funding, and really how much of that funding would the federal government be committed to cover?
So Grays Bay is a perfect example of a piece of dual-use infrastructure. There will be clear and obvious Canadian Armed Forces requirements of that project. There will be clear and obvious uses by resource companies and potential developments in that region. And there are clear and obvious civilian community uses for that project as well. So finding the right funding mix will be important. It's not something that we're doing today. We, I think, very clearly understand that we're building a port complex and a road for generations that will follow for their opportunity, for their livelihood, and indeed for the country's sovereignty. So Grays Bay is an essential and very central project to not just the North, but to the kind of vision that the Prime Minister and our government have for the country and our ability to build and develop, all the while accompanying communities in every region of our country. So we don't have, of course, a fully costed out Grays Bay, sort of financial stack, if you will, but we see a number of obvious uses, and that will ultimately determine where the funds come from to develop that infrastructure.
Merci beaucoup. And we have one more question in the room we're going to go to, but before that, for the phone number with the hand raised online, if you can just put your name in as you're zooming or in the chat, then we can go to you afterwards.
My name is Lisa with North Now, GoFM in Yellowknife, and my question is how will this new streamlining policy and approach, how will that deal with things like hidden costs, for example, for road maintenance, to ensure that these impacts will not affect, become kind of a noose over the necks of First Nations and northern communities?
Thanks. I've got the O&M cost probably falling under me, so let me take that one for you. And right now, just for example, on Mackenzie Valley Highway, to build the winter road that goes only about halfway up, costs now, we're approaching $10 million a year. So we're already spending this kind of money to build a road that melts every single year. The diamond mines have been building at $25 a year, $25 million a year, a road that melts every single year. So shifting the dollars around that we have from building something that we don't actually have permanent access to being the operations and maintenance on something that's a permanent asset not concerned with that. I think that's a good trade-off. Besides which, part of the beauty of these projects is that if we are in fact unlocking opportunities, creating businesses, opportunities, creating points, I expect that revenues are going to start to increase. So then we're not going to be looking at the tight and narrow fiscal situation that I'm in now. I'm going to have the opportunity to have more revenues coming in that I can put towards maintaining those assets that are creating those revenue opportunities. Thanks.
Merci beaucoup, and that concludes our press conference. Thank you very much, everyone, and I'll wish everyone a great day.
Thanks, everyone. I just want to say a few words. Today's announcement marks another significant milestone in the advancement of the Mackenzie Valley Highway. The people of the Mackenzie Valley have been talking about this road for generations. For them, it's not just about building a road. It's about stronger connections between communities and families, better emergency response, new economic opportunities, and it's about making life more affordable. The Mackenzie Valley Highway is also important for the future of Canada. It will be a powerful expression of Arctic sovereignty. It will strengthen our ability to defend North America, and it will help advance Canada's goals of becoming an energy superpower and a global supplier of choice for critical minerals. As we move forward, this work has to be done in the right way. That means working in partnership with Indigenous governments and communities, respecting Indigenous rights, and protecting the environment. And it will be done in the right way. It has been done in the right way, and that's why we see it advancing. The practical work to keep the Mackenzie Valley Highway project moving forward is already underway, but there is still much work ahead, and we cannot let up, and we will not let up until the job is done. As Cease McCauley, the late champion of the Mackenzie Valley Highway, would say, let's build the damn road. Thanks, everyone.